Welcome to the Let's Stay Healthy radio show, sponsored and brought to you by Montana Harvest Natural Food Store in Billings, Montana. If you don't spend time on your wellness, you're going to be forced to spend time on your illness. Your health is your most valuable asset. Invest in it by tuning in now.
Welcome everybody to Let's Stay Healthy. Michael Ray here with you from Montana Harvest. I'm here with Kimmy Oliver from Montana Harvest, one of the owners. We have one of our favorite guests on, Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutritional detective. And we're going to have a lot of fun. And he's like, not afraid to tell you how it is. And I like that about him because we respect that. But I know you talk about breaking gallstone myths and the gallbladder health and all that. I know you guys want to get into the toxic bile and things like that. So go ahead.
Oh, so I'll just jump in from there, right? Well,
Right.
thank you for having me on again. So what I came up with over the years, kind of the culmination of my life's work, was something called toxic bile paradigm, because in my history of doing health and stuff like that, all of us are looking for, like, we would love for it to all be one answer, right? Like, is there one answer to fixing health? And each group out there tends to promote that, whether it's candida causes everything, or toxic metals cause everything, or your gut biome's messed up and that causes everything, or leaky gut causes everything. And, some people would even think that vitamin A, I say vitamin A toxicity causes everything, when I've actually said that that's not true either. So there's a lot of stuff where I was always looking for, I guess what I realized I was looking for was a common thread that tied everything together. So people could have, like, somebody over here could have mercury toxicity, somebody over here could have a horrible candida infection. And so both of these things could be true in different people, but what are they connected? Like, how do we fix it all, and where do we start? That was the thing I was looking for. So what it came out to be, well, I got into, back in about 2013, I was kind of one of the early guys on the vitamin D supplement train. I was finger prick testing people in my office for vitamin D. I thought it was that important that they get on vitamin D as soon as possible. And here we are 12 years later, and now everybody's saying it. So we kind of start going, oh, well, why did it take them so long? But then I realized, as I got into hair analysis, when you look at hair analysis tests, and you see on hair analysis tests that the calcium on people on vitamin D supplements, the calcium goes way up and the potassium goes way down. And in hair analysis, the very simple explanation of that is they call a hypothyroid pattern. And I was like, okay, so wait, so you're telling me that vitamin D supplements directly cause a hypothyroid pattern? And if you go into the research and you start looking into calcium, you start looking into potassium, you'll find that in hypothyroid states, there's often an excess amount of calcium going on, and there's a lower amount of potassium going on. So I was like, okay, that's right. So I had been putting all my people on vitamin D. I decided to get them all off. So I'm having to do a mea culpa and say, sorry, I was wrong. Don't take it. So that was my first experience with going. I thought vitamin D was the fix to everything. That was one of the things that I've looked into in the past. And then over time, I forget what year it was, maybe 2020, I found out about vitamin A toxicity. And I got into that. And I started realizing that this was part of the answer to, I tend to have clients and patients in the past who stay with me for years. So I can watch how these things, a lot of people have testimonials from weeks or maybe a couple months. I have testimonials from years, and especially my biggest testimonials, the ones I'm most proud of, are the ones people who are like in their 50s, 60s, 70s, because if you can fix people in 50s, 60s, and 70s, what you're doing is really good. People fixing people in their 20s, you could do all sorts of things and fix 20-year-olds. That doesn't mean that it's good long term. So if something's fixing older folks, it's legit, it's valuable, and it's lasting for years. So I had people coming back going, I got these things creeping up on me, like, I'm getting a little more tired, or my sleep is not as good, or my hair is thinning, or, what can we do? And at the time I used the tools I had, but I was like, one of the differences I think about me is I say, what am I missing? What piece am I missing to help them? And then all of a sudden the vitamin A toxicity information came along, and I thought, I'm literally supplementing people with vitamin A. And it accumulates. Anything that is fat soluble is fat storable. This is very important for people who are like trying to eat tons of animal fat now. Like, where do you think that cow stores its toxins, its fat soluble toxins? Stores it in fat. What, you know, that eating lots of fat will actually increase your absorption of fat soluble toxins and toxic metals. Like, this is all in the research. So all this really high fat eating probably not going to end well. But anyway, that gets into bile later. So then I saw all this about vitamin A, and then I got into Anthony Mawson's work. Anthony Mawson, his son died of a I believe it was was it glioblastoma or neuroblastoma? I don't remember what type of brain cancer, but he got into researching what could have caused it, and he started connecting vitamin A toxicity to brain cancer. And then he started pumping out these research papers, these review papers, connecting the presentation of all these diseases to the same presentation of retinoic acid excess, which is vitamin A toxicity. And I started getting that. And then he was saying, okay, so the vitamin A, when people are fine, everything's fine. But when they suddenly get sick, this is the one thing that I never got an explanation for. People would be like, what is remission? Right? Or why do they say everybody's got the shingles virus, but everybody doesn't have shingles? Like, how can you have a disease in you that suddenly jumps out and then it goes back away again? Like, that didn't make it, nobody gave me an explanation of that. So I thought, okay, what he's saying is that this stored vitamin A, which we do store vitamin A in our liver to a great extent, and we store other toxins in our liver to great extents, it was leaking out into the system. He was saying there was liver damage happening. It was bursting cells in the liver and breaking things open, basically, and it was leaking toxicity into the system. And I went, that makes sense. This is how somebody could be feeling fine, and then let's say they have a stressful event, and then all of a sudden they're in bed. Like, they're internally poisoning themselves. They have released the poison into their system. So I started to look into that, and then I some of the words he used, I got into cholestasis, which is when bile made by your liver leaks into your system, leaks into your bloodstream. And I knew previously that things in the blood was where they cause the most problems. So this is why they talk about, like, the blood test, like even your electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, if those get out of balance in your blood, you very quickly get problems in your brain and your heart and other things. So I knew that the blood was very important to maintain. And then I started to realize that if you dump all this poison into your blood, you could very quickly get sick. So then I started getting into the bile. And once I'd learned about cholestasis, or what we call toxic leaky bile, causing problems, well, we started to create a paradigm, which is the more toxic your bile is, the more you're going to hurt and suffer when it leaks into your system. We dump bile. We do bile dumps every time we eat. We do them when we have stress. A lot of times when people they're chronically sick and they exercise too much and they're wrecked, or they go out in the sun too long and they're wrecked, those things cause bile dumps. And if they leak it into their system, they have problems. So let's back up just a little bit. Bile, by definition, is if you wanted to think of it as, does it have functions in the body? Do we need it for certain things? Yes. I'm not going to talk about that because we just assume that it's going to do its things as long as it's coming out. So bile is the way your liver gets rid of waste, of its waste, right? People say your liver is your main detox organ. And I go, okay, yes, you can have a sewage treatment plant. The sewage treatment plant is going to try to pull water out of it, like reclaimed water, right? But then there's the stuff they have to get rid of, the toxic stuff. People tend to mistakenly think that the liver just makes toxins poof disappear. Like, they hits the liver, it detoxes it, and they're gone. Like, the toxins are gone. And that's absolutely not true. That's a nice fantasy story, but it's not how it works. So the liver concentrates these toxins into the bile, because the liver then dumps the bile into the intestines. It mixes with your poop, for lack of a better term, and then you poop out some of it. And because your guts are made to absorb things, you're going to reabsorb a lot of it, and it goes right back to your liver. So your liver is in this loop of making bile. It goes into the gut. It reabsorbs. It actually reabsorbs, tends to be more toxic by what the gut bacteria do to it. And then your liver does this dance and you're only pooping out a fraction of it each day. We were never meant to be as toxic as we are today. So we're really toxic. So that's where the people will say, well, why do we only poop out so much? Because we were never meant to be this toxic. It was meant to be a way for us to get rid of stuff, but it's not fast enough with how toxic we are. Okay, so the bile by definition is the most toxic fluid in our human body. Detox has not happened for a toxic compound until that thing has left your body, until it has escaped your body. It's still in your body causing problems until it has left. So that's a big thing. So then when your liver makes this toxic bile, it can get so toxic that it eats holes in tissues, in cells. In the research, it has been shown to eat holes in the cells, the liver cells that make it. It has been shown to eat holes in the little teeny bile ducts inside the liver. It has been shown to eat holes in the liver, in the big bile ducts. It has been shown to eat holes in the gallbladder, which is made to handle bile. It has been shown to eat holes in your gut. This is leaky gut. It has been shown when we talk about ulcers in the stomach, when you have reflux, when you have GERD, notice how they changed it from acid reflux to gastroesophageal reflux disease. They took the acid out of it because it's actually bile going back up into your stomach. Your stomach is designed for stomach acid. Your stomach is not designed for bile. So you get bile up there, and we were talking about it eating holes. What do we call holes that are eaten in the stomach? We call them ulcers. If it goes up high enough into your esophagus and it's there enough, what do we call those holes? We call that Barrett's esophagus, literally eating holes in your esophagus. So this bile goes and it just eats holes everywhere. And once it eats these holes, it then gets into your bloodstream. Actually, sorry, I forgot to mention the stomach has been shown to directly absorb bile into the bloodstream. So it's not supposed to be there, but the stomach is designed to absorb stuff. So then we have this toxic bile leaking into your bloodstream, and we have basically self-poisoned ourselves. And then all that blood, it either goes back to the liver and the liver gets another chance to try to filter it out, or it goes to the kidneys. Kidneys don't like it either. It damages the kidneys, and this is part of where kidney problems come from. The third detox route that people talk about is the skin. Well, you have this toxic bile coming out of the skin. It's going to damage the skin on its way out, and then the longer it sits on the skin, the more damage it causes just sitting there. This is why some skin diseases can be improved simply by washing often, because you're just washing the toxic bile off. And then the other thing is all that toxic bile in your blood is hitting all the other organs. Diabetes, it's hitting your pancreas, heart disease, it's hitting your heart, lung disease, it actually hits the lungs, and then you breathe out more aldehydes, and that damages your lungs. So it just goes everywhere. And it all depends on a person's, people say, well, what's the disease I have if I have this toxic bile leaking? It could pretty much be anything depending upon genetics, a person's weak links, which is kind of genetics too, the person's toxicity profile, the person's nutrient deficiency status, all of these conditions, all of these characteristics combine to create what disease presents. And as people, I don't know if people know this, but usually in the research, it's noticed that autoimmune conditions, once somebody has one, it's very likely they're going to have another one and another one and another one. And they just continue. And we know this about modern medicine. People just fall apart system by system. What is going on? It's just weak link after weak link being exposed to this toxic bile. And the other problem is the more toxic your bile gets, the more toxic you get, the slower you detox. People don't want to think about this, but the more toxic you get, the older you get, general, all these things that we know about humans in general, the older you get, the longer you've had the disease, all these things tend to point towards more toxicity, and the more toxicity you have, the slower you detox. So then you get more diseases as you get older. The more meds you take, the more toxic you make yourself, the more diseases you get as you get older. So toxic bile paradigm is really just a way of explaining this stuff. And then people will say, well, how do I fix my toxic bile? Okay, so I Doc, I'm on board. I think you're right. I think I have this issue. What do I do now? Well, it's a three-pronged approach that we do, that we have seen amazing things. First thing that people, if you're going to get into this, it's not a weekend cleanse. It's not like a month-long detox. This is a lifestyle of mainly diet, but there's other things that people can do too. It is the three prongs. One is to reduce, minimize, or eliminate toxins coming in as we are able. Next one is to remove or facilitate the removal of stored toxins. People seem to want to believe that we don't store toxins. Well, if you look in the research, it's called accumulate. They don't like the idea that we're storing them because they're like, why would my body do that to me? Storage just means putting a bunch of stuff in one place. It's not a judgment on good or bad, but people tend to think that it's good. If you're storing it, it's good. So anyway, we get rid of the accumulated toxins. They can store in your bones, they can store in your brain, they can store in your body fat, they can store all over the place. Then the third thing, is we want to restore nutrient status. We want to correct nutrient deficiencies. The nutrient list that we correct is actually quite a bit shorter than what everybody else out there thinks we need. And we just get whatever they think we need from food, when we get whatever we need from food. And then if people do hair and blood testing with me, or with me or one of my facilitators, then we work on fixing those things that we can directly see that we know impact this process. So that's it. So we've been doing that. We've been refining it over, I've been on YouTube now 4 years or 4 or 5 years, and we've been refining it ever since. And, people come to me. The cool thing is I want to be able to, my goal is always to be a teacher. I am teaching a man how to fish, as they say. That's my goal. My goal is to have people know how to do this eventually, so they know what they're doing. They don't need me anymore. And they can teach other people, or they can send them to the Love Your Liver program so they can learn on their own. But the goal is for people to get better and then go and live their lives. It may take years. This is expected. We don't get to clean up 30, 40, 50 years of toxicity in a month or 2 months. That doesn't happen. Anybody who tells you that that's true, they are lying. They haven't done the real work that it takes. Now, people always want to wonder, can we make it go faster? Well, I hope so, as we learn more. However, as we have a saying, it's a poison on the way in, and it's a poison on the way out. This is the risks of detox, is if you push it too hard, you can then as you get healthier, yes, your bile is getting less toxic, except you also make more bile. So the more toxic people get, the less bile they tend to make, which also means they're not getting rid of as much bile. So then toxins they're exposed to, their bile becomes more concentrated in toxicity, right? You make less bile, but you have the same amount of toxins. That bile becomes even more concentrated and toxic. So as we get people better, their bile is becoming less toxic, and they start making more of it. So we have to teach people how to regulate this so that they don't push things too hard and dump bile too much, too fast, that then they leak into their system, because the leaks aren't all filled right away. People want to, they want to think that they do this, and all of a sudden, like, they don't have these leaks anymore. And I'm like, no. This takes a while. This takes a while to fix. Like, this is just the biggest thing I tell people on a daily basis is slow down. Dr. Smith, I feel better in so many ways, but I also, like, this is aggravated right now, or this is coming back, or whatever. But I feel better in like 10 ways, but I'm having these 2 things coming back. And I'm like, you're pushing too hard. Pump the brakes. Like, everybody wants it to go faster. And I'm like, how many people do you think we've had go through the program trying to push things as fast as humanly possible? And the key thing to realize is, you're here. I tell people, you're here because you don't feel good. You're here because of the toxic bile leaking. So you're going to come, and I'm going to tell you how to do these things that we know you have toxicity inside of you, and you're going to try to push the bile detox and dumping faster, and you think you're not going to pay a price when you're already here because of your toxic bile. And then eventually they usually, once they've kicked, if they're the type who wants to kick their own butt, thinking they're going to get out of it faster, they eventually learn. And then they go, you were right. I toned it down after a while because it just, we never know how much toxicity somebody has in them. The only way we could start to know that is I asked my environmental medicine teacher in naturopathic medical school. He's like the toxicity guy. I do things completely different from him, but that's a whole nother topic. I said, how could we get, he was talking about body burden, as in how much toxicity somebody has overall in them. And I said, how could we measure this? Like, can we look at this to see like 6 months down the line, is their body burden less? And he said, well, you'd have to take a biopsy of like basically every single tissue of their body. And he's like, nobody's going to do that. And we can't do that. It's not ethical. It's going to be damaging. It's going to, you're going to have to recover from that. Nobody does it. So you don't get to know. And I was kind of like, okay, that's a legit answer. We can't even get good studies these days on vitamin A biopsies of the liver. Like they won't allow it unless they have like already, I mean, they won't allow living people and as a study to get a biopsy of their liver. Because liver biopsies are still dangerous on their own, and people can have lots of pain from them afterwards for a long time. So we can't get good, accurate information. People will say, well, how do we know? And I say, well, there's one study from like, I think it was 2020, maybe earlier. I don't remember, but it was 27 people, 27 dead people that they did a necropsy on. So a dead person, a dead person biopsy. And a full third of them were at the gold standard, which is the liver biopsy, gold standard vitamin A toxic. So 9 of the 27 people had gold standard diagnosable vitamin A toxicity. World Health Organization considers an epidemic at 20%. So we just had this 33%. And I've shown bigger numbers. I've shown numbers in Africa in the 50s and 60s of 50% of people liver biopsy diagnosable vitamin A toxicity. And people are just like, well, this isn't happening. And I go, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. There's enough research out there. 44% of white people in Singapore in 1974 that they tested had diagnosable vitamin A toxicity in their liver. So I have all these papers. And it's going on. It's very real. And vitamin A is just one of the things that your liver stores. Copper is another one that it dumps into your system. And then you get very obvious, we can see symptom patterns, especially from copper toxicity in people when they dump bile. So, yeah.
Doesn't your gallbladder store bile?
Well, your gallbladder is supposed to be like a temporary, okay, so the purpose of the gallbladder, what is the purpose of it? It does have a purpose, right? You want to, it collects the bile. So the liver makes the bile at like a trickle. So it goes down and there's a little valve that keeps the bile going back up into the gallbladder. And it's this little muscular sac. So typically what people associate with this is when you eat, your gallbladder dumps the bile. Okay. The main thing that people will say that does that for is so you can absorb, so you can break down, emulsify, digest, and absorb fats. Okay. Well, back in the day, when you think about, I want you to think of people who were living 2,000 years ago. There was not a lot of fat around. Like, when people think of truly grass-fed beef. Like, the farmers aren't growing grass. They're just we have a guy here in town in Tucson. He has cows that are eating scrub brush. Like they're going around the desert eating the scrub brush, the weeds, the dry stuff. And that meat is so lean. Like he actually warns people. He's like, you cannot cook this fast. The ground beef will just burn. There's like no fat. And I remember driving through Mexico as a kid and seeing cows on the side of the road and you could see their ribs. So I'm like, there's no fat on those. So when people are talking about eating high amounts of beef fat as like natural to humans, I go, no. Wild game is super lean. Real cows living the way they normally would, they're super lean. I always joke about the Little House on the Prairie when people talk about dairy fat. And I say, okay, so if the Little House on the Prairie family wanted butter or cream, what kind of milk did they then have? They had skim milk. You can't have full fat milk and make butter and cream. You don't get to have it. So then people start going, well, and then there was only one cow and it was only producing milk. First, they had to give it to the calf. And then if there was anything left over from this, cow that's just foraging, then the family might get some milk. But they often fed skim milk to pigs back in the past to fatten up pigs. Isn't it funny that they would feed skim milk to pigs to fatten them up? I always found that very interesting. You can look that up. So, and even if you're thinking of nuts and seeds and stuff, but if you had to go out and collect nuts and seeds and crack them and do all this stuff, like you'd be burning a lot of calories to get. There's just not that much fat out in the wilderness, if you will. So we didn't need very much bile back in the past to absorb the paltry amount of fat that we were eating. So then the gallbladder holds this and it squeezes it out to help with the fat digestion, but also it is the way. So if bile is as toxic as I say, like if bile can literally eat holes in your gut and cause leaky gut, you would not want to think about this. You would not want to dump bile by itself into the guts. One of the pictures I have people think of is like hot lava. Think of the bile as like hot lava. If it goes down into your guts all by itself with nothing to dilute it or spread it out, it's just burning your guts. And people most of us they've pooped bile where they see just yellow come out and they feel the burn, or they've vomited bile and you feel the burn and you taste it and it's horrible stuff. So you don't want that stuff undiluted. So it comes out when you eat, because now this is a visual that some people, don't like, because we got to imagine poop now. So imagine no poop there. You just see the old Pepto-Bismol commercials where you'd see the pink like coating the digestive system going down. That is what I want you to think of with the bile by itself. It's just coating the digestive system. There's nothing there to counter it. It's just eating holes and things. Whereas when you eat, you have what I call the food poop. The food poop is, at one point it's food and at one point it's poop, but it's going through, because if you're still absorbing stuff from it, nutrition wise, it's still food, but you want to get rid of it eventually. So it's still poop. So it's in this limbo. But if you think of the food poop, it is going to soak up the bile, and then only the bile on the outside is going to be touching your gut lining. So you're protecting yourself from this noxious soup of toxic bile by simply diluting it. Diluting is, that's a huge way that's one way to get away from toxicity, is to dilute it, right? So the food poop does that, and then eventually you poop it out and you absorb less because more of it's in the poop itself. So that the gallbladder is, things can get stagnant in the gallbladder. One of the things in the 1905, 1906 studies on bile, where they would inject dogs and other animals literally with bile into their blood, they saw paralysis and coma and eventually death. Okay, so what they're saying is bile in the blood can go around and cause muscles not to work right. Okay? We've had people with gastroparesis where their stomach is literally paralyzed. It doesn't work. And we get them doing this program and their stomach starts working again because the bile is not going back up there all the time. It's staying down where it's supposed to, and it's less toxic. Okay, so what about your gallbladder? Your gallbladder is a little muscle sac. It's always got bile in it. Could it, in theory, start getting paralyzed and work less because the bile is eventually affecting its ability to function? What do they do HIDA scans for? They look at the function of the gallbladder, like how much can it squeeze? I'm saying the thing that's causing it to squeeze less, like modern medicine has no explanation of why this happens. This is why people like toxic bile paradigm, is because I'm finally around here saying, this is why this happens. And if we can fix the bile, your gallbladder will start contracting again, and it will eventually work. But if things get stagnant, so if the bile is sitting in there a long time because it's not squeezing, stagnation tends to lead to crystallization. Gallstones, like things are actually sitting and stagnant so long that they are crystallizing and forming little rocks, basically. Um, Calcification of joints is a process people understand. Those knobs on the bone spurs and the knobs on your joints and the joints getting bigger as you get older. That is calcification of soft tissues. It's not the bone growing, it's soft tissue around there turning into hard tissue, bone tissue. But with the gallbladder, it's most, I mean, if you look, the biggest ingredient in gallstones is calcium. Calcium loves to form stones when it's stagnant. So that's a that's what happens with the gallbladder is it just gets stagnant and things sit there and then you start forming gallstones and the gallbladder doesn't contract and then you get people who are still eating. I mean, the biggest thing they do with gallbladder issues, right, is they have people eat less fat. And I'm telling people that they're eating way too much fat already. And you just, then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, I don't feel terrible after I eat anymore. And you go, yeah, because you're not trying to trigger your gallbladder into contracting by eating a high fat meal. You're letting it like relax. And you're also, the thing that people don't understand about bile, some people try to dump a bunch of bile by eating a bunch of fat. Well, we know that gallbladder problems tend to come about with high fat diets. Okay, so that's not a good thing to do. But also, bile helps you absorb fat and vice versa. The bile gets absorbed with the fat. So bile helps you absorb fat. Fat is absorbed with the bile. So then you're actually, if you were trying to get rid of toxic bile, eating a ton of fat is, you just dump it into your guts and then you reabsorb as much as possible of it because that's what the bile is there to do. Like it binds to the fat and then you absorb it. So this is like figuring this stuff out is what toxic bile paradigm is like all about. And it's not just eat a high fat diet or eat a low carb diet or do these things. It's like give your liver a break and stop loading the toxins in and help the liver to get rid of what it's stored and give it the nutrients that it needs to run. And then the idea of all of this is that our bodies are miraculously designed to heal themselves if we simply stop giving it the beat down of the toxins and we give it the nutrition that it needs. That can fix most things. And that's it. Like it's really that simple, but everybody wants to make it complicated with all these like little cellular mechanisms and all this stuff. Oh, it's inflammation. Oh, it's this. And I'm like, you want to know what causes inflammation? It's bile. We can go in any disease and pretty much find more bile in the blood. If they did the research, if they look at total bile in the blood, you can go and find in any disease there's more bile in the blood than people without disease. That's just the way it is. Like I think the diabetic study I found, diabetics had twice as much bile in their blood as the controls. It's just
And toxic bile.
well, I mean, they look at certain parts of the bile. See, the problem is now I said this, I called this like 2 years ago. I said, what you're going to see, the new gaslighting is going to be this, the researchers are going to start saying, so what they'll do is they'll look at, okay, so they look at diabetes and they'll say, okay, diabetics have more of this bile acid in their blood and less of this bile acid in their blood. Okay. And control people have this other arrangement. And so then they're going to say, oh, well, then obviously this bile acid in your blood helps prevent diabetes. And I start going, we aren't supposed to have bile in our blood at all. It's not supposed to be there. So that what we're doing is we're really looking for the best of the worst. And that's what I talk about the bile acid recipe. So that there was a study on hypothyroid women, or I don't know if it was women or if it's just hypothyroid folks, but most hypothyroid folks are women. That's just the way it tends to go. So what they did was they had people without thyroid issues. They had hypothyroid people, they had hyperthyroid people, and they had hypothyroid people who were medicated to normal with thyroid hormone. Okay, so they had these 4 different people, and they looked at the composition or the recipe of the bile acids in their blood. Okay, so they compared what I call the bile acid recipe that was in their blood, which is not supposed to be there. And what they found was they found a different bile acid recipe for the hyperthyroid and the normal people. And the crazy thing was, well, they found hypothyroid, hyperthyroid, and normal people. The hypothyroid folks that were medicated to normal, theirs looked the same as the normal folks. Their bile acid recipe had changed from them giving them the hormone. So what we see is that these different diseases have different, what I call a bile acid recipe. And this is how people can sometimes take a supplement, like they might take taurine supplement or they might take a glycine supplement, and all of a sudden they like feel amazing or they feel terrible. Well, the taurine and the glycine actually bind to bile acids. And taurine, as an example, taurine might bind to one bile acid, and that makes things worse. Like it's actually a worse recipe. Or taurine binds to another bile acid and it becomes a better recipe. But we don't know what a person's recipe is. So they simply have to, sometimes they'll just try taurine and they'll be like, I feel great, I feel crappy, or I feel nothing. Or they might do the same thing with glycine. And they see if they feel better or worse. Because we don't know. If you got your bile acids tested at LabCorp, you can get them tested in the blood. They test 6 different bile acids. Of all the research I've been over on bile acid stuff, and that's a lot, there are 56 different bile acids in the human body. One of them was only found in infants who were going through septic shock. That's probably a pretty bad one. But what I'm saying is they measure 6. That's all we can get tested in people. So we don't get to see a picture of the other 50 that are making up the recipe. Like, and I tell people about a recipe, right? Very simple things with recipes, like you have a soup. Can you how much water does it take you to add to a soup to ruin the soup? Like very little, right? You can add like tons of salt to a soup and not necessarily ruin it. People will still eat it. But if you could take different herbs and spices. You could take one spice and add it to that soup, just a pinch, and people don't want to eat it. So that's like the bad bile acids can come in and just ruin the whole thing. So it's kind of like we don't obsess over the bile acid recipe. We just kind of look at the outcome because we can't measure it. So we look at, did you try this? Did you feel better? And very much with anybody out there listening with supplements. First of all, if you're taking a supplement and you don't feel better from it, like noticeably, and you're not measuring anything about it, why are you taking it? Like I always tell people, if you forget the reason why you're taking a supplement, if you literally forget a reason you're taking a supplement and you continue taking it, you're not only wasting your money, but you're also loading your liver. Every supplement or food or anything you put in your body is a load your liver has to go through. It's just like it's like a bouncer at a nightclub. The more people that are trying to go through, the more the bouncer has to work. The more things you put in your body, the more your liver has to work. So I tell people, if you don't remember why you're taking it, or if it's not helping you, or you're just taking it because you've been taking it forever, or you read like, oh, God forbid, that Life Extension magazine or one of these things where they just try to sell you every single thing, stop taking it. I mean, I had one woman come in. When she came to me, she was on she listed out all the ingredients of all her supplements on a spreadsheet. It was 3 pages of ingredients from the different supplements she was taking. In the first visit, I helped her eliminate, with these methods, I helped her eliminate 2 pages of her supplements. Not only did she tell me she felt better after that, her and her husband took a vacation because they were saving so much money not buying supplements they didn't need. I mean, it's crazy. Like one of the things that I do, I'm definitely not, there's a kind of a big anti-supplement push on the alternative side. Like they're just anti all supplements. And I'm kind of going, I think this is a whole big psyop. Like it's thinking, are there good supplements? Yes. There's not that many of them. There's nowhere near what people think. Are there a lot of supplements that are not very useful or may even be damaging? A lot of supplements, folks, like herbs and stuff like that. You know who pays for most of the herb research out there is pharma, because pharma is trying to find new drugs. So then what we're saying is a lot of these herb compounds are drug-like in nature, and pharma just takes them and tweaks them a little bit so they can patent them. Now, pharma drugs are stronger than herbs, which also means they have more side effects. But does that not also potentially mean that like herb compounds are just weak drugs with weaker side effects? Because they're all kissing cousins. And I go, you've been taking an herb for, let's say, your prostate. If you stop that herb, does the problem come back? Like, do you plan on taking this herb for the rest of your life? And if somebody says yes, well, then it's not fixing anything. You're just masking a symptom, just like pharmaceuticals would. It's just less side effects and less potent. But it's still teaching people about drug-like effects from natural compounds is a big thing that I do. Like, I'm big on essential nutrients, and if we're going to do something that's not essential, people try it out and they see if they feel better. And if they don't, I tell them to stop taking it. I mean, I sell supplements. I'm one of the people on the internet saying, take less or don't take it or try again later. And I don't think people often realize just how ethical I'm trying to be by not pushing my supplements. And if people say they don't feel good on it, I say that happens, like, then don't take it. Don't force it. Like, there are people who will continue taking supplements just because, I don't know, they're trying to like please me. They're like, well, I got to keep taking it because Dr. Smith says it's good for me. And I go, if you don't feel good on it, it's not good for you. Stop taking it. Like, I don't want to be here sounding like a broken record. But
Well, and the supplements that you promote, a lot of them are minerals.
yes.
And that's what we stand by at Montana Harvest is remineralizing the body, stopping your intake of toxins and remineralizing the body.
The sparks of life, as they call them. Yes, the minerals are the spark plugs of life. That's what I was taught in my hair analysis course. Yes. Yeah, most B vitamins, I think, are just antidotes for other toxicities. They bind to things. And I have the research showing like thiamine binds to aldehydes. I think thiamine just is an antidote, and that's why people have to take mega doses of it to get these supposedly amazing effects. And then I go, well, when do you get to get off of it? And they go, no, never. And I go, okay, then you're just medicating. It's just the same thing. So, but yeah, vitamins are definitely mostly a Rockefeller creation. Yeah.
Now I have a big question for you.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but are you seeing the MTHFR genes and what is your input on that? Because we're getting so many customers nowadays that come in and they say, I have this genetic mutation and I have the MTHFR gene. What's your take on that? Because it all boils down to the liver.
It does. Okay, so first, anyone out there who is believing the MTHFR and all the methylation genetic testing, that is Merck science. That is Merck-owned science. You are in the pharmaceutical realm, and that's why Merck makes these high mega doses of methylated B vitamins. Like, they are the biggest pushers of it. Second, I got into methylation, the health stuff on methylation years ago. I tend to be an early adopter with these things. I'm ahead of the curve, and I hadn't gotten into the methylation as early as some people, but I learned about undermethylators and overmethylators and the genetic tests. And then there was like a 10-page survey to tell you whether you were an overmethylator or an undermethylator. And then there was the flush niacin test. The flush niacin test was very simple. It was, you take 50 milligrams, which is a very small dose of flush niacin. And if you flushed, you're an undermethylator. And if you didn't flush, you were likely an overmethylator. There was a lot fewer overmethylators than there are undermethylators. Okay, so I did that. And I had everything pointed to me being an undermethylator, which is what most people are said to be. And then I got excited about it. I started doing it on my clients. Started doing all this. I mean, I was doing the blood test. What was it? Histamine. And I forget the other one. Was it GGT? I don't remember. Anyway, I was doing the histamine testing and all this stuff. And then I was doing I wanted to really hone in on it. Blood testing, questionnaire, and the flush niacin test. And I'd have people come in and they'd be like, under, over. I'm like, wait, how can, what's not lining up? How can they be under, under, over? And then somebody else would be like over, over, under. And I'm, wait, what? This doesn't make any sense. And so I started to lose, and then I just saw that it was the fixes for this was just massive amounts of supplements. And I went, okay. And I tried it, and I tried it with some of my clients, and I always watch. And I went, this is not helping very much. Like some people got a little better, but most people were just kind of like, or what we decided they were, like an over methylator or an under methylator, and they took those supplements, they would feel horrible on. And then we'd switch them to the other side and then they'd feel better. And I was going, this is not scientific at all. This is just not. Well, then I eventually met my lovely girlfriend, Kelsey, who was a big fan of flush niacin. And she started telling me, I was talking to her about the methylation test with the 50 milligrams of flush niacin. And she said, oh, that's funny because if you keep taking flush niacin, you'll stop flushing. And I went, wait, now I can change my methylation status by taking flush niacin, apparently. And so I did. And so I was flushing on 50 milligrams. I hated the flush in the beginning. I was like, I took it in college and I was like, I don't understand. I heard about it and all these guys were like blood flow and feel so good and whatever. And I would take it and I'd flush and I'd feel kind of itchy and like kind of moody because I didn't feel good. And I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't feel any amazing benefit. I'm not going to do it. Okay. So then fast forward to after I meet Kelsey and she's talking to me about how safe it is and how the flush gets better. Actually, the more you take, the less the flush gets. I took at one point to prove the safety of it to myself. I took 15 grams a day for a full week. That's a lot. And I took 20 grams one of those days. So I was taking a full 5 grams, 5,000 milligrams, 4 times a day. I was not flushing at all. I had no problems. So then recently, Kelsey and I did a video on debunking the myths of flush niacin. And in it, she had a great study where they had people with a true genetic disease. I forget what the disease was called. It's very rare. But they had these people with a true genetic disease and they gave them flush niacin. They had methylation. It's like a methylation disorder. And flush niacin fixed all of their methylation markers of this genetic disease. So I went, and that's where Kelsey was telling me, she's like, oh, methylation problems, like flush niacin fixes it. Now I'm going, yeah, pretty much it does. Now, does everybody have to take mega doses like me? I was taking those to prove a point, not because of the health benefit. I take anywhere. Nowadays I take 400 milligrams. Some days if I want to do a big flush, if you want to call it, I'll take 2,500. But most days I'm taking like 400. And we make a 25 milligram pill that people get a lot of benefits from. So it's any of it, in my opinion, is better than none. So, and then the last thing I want to say about the MTHFR and the genetics of it. Okay. When did Merck create methylation science? Let's just say, I'm going to pick a number that's probably way further back than 1980. Let's just say 1980. So let's say methylation science and B vitamins has been around for almost half a century. Okay. Since it's genetics, right? And genetics are handed down, supposedly, which I mean, I do believe genetics are handed down. I don't believe genetic science is that good, but I do believe, like, I know I can see myself in my kids. Like, genetics is real. Once you have kids, you know genetics is real. So how, if people needed these mega doses of methylated B vitamins that didn't exist until, let's just say, 50 years ago, why did their bloodline not end? How were they able to live long enough to reproduce? Because they weren't getting enough of these methylated B vitamins from foods. They should have died off. This methylation BS, like the MTHF and all this stuff, is the biggest, like, pharmaceutical driven psyop in the nutrition world that I've ever seen. And we have people who were on methylated B vitamins and we get them off that we don't yank them off of them because their bodies are kind of addicted to it. And we have to, get the flush niacin going and get the other toxicities going. But again, what do people say that the methylation problem causes? They're like, it makes me detox slower. And what do we say causes slower detox? Toxicity and lacking the proper nutrients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what if you just had these people, and then you have these people, let's say, doing the MTHF and the methylated methylcobalamin and all this stuff. And let's say they're into health, so they're taking lots of vitamin D, lots of vitamin A. They're shoving down organ meats like liver. They're doing all these things that we would say don't do. Oh, vitamin A depletes folate and B12. Wait, vitamin A depletes folate and B12. What are the big methylation vitamins? Folate and B12. And I say there's a vitamin A toxicity epidemic worldwide going on. And then you have rich Westerners going, I need methylated B vitamins. And methylation, my methylation problem slows my detox. And I'm saying toxicity slows your detox. You see how it all starts to fit together. And then we go, okay, so what do we fix? We fix the toxicity and we give you some nutrition like, flush niacin, which flush niacin gives you it helps produce the NAD that runs like 400 of your detox pathways. The flush is actually like a giant detox of your skin. It's actually the detox taking place in your skin and you feel it. You can't feel the detox in your brain. Like an example is schizophrenics. They would start schizophrenics out with like 3 grams a day and they wouldn't flush. And the theory is that the flush niacin was going all to their schizophrenics. So it was going all to their brain. And we don't have sensors in our brain. So they don't feel anything. But you have these sensors in your skin and you feel something there. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up the methylation thing. I don't get to talk about that much, but I think Merck is very happy to sell everybody's. People will be like, no, the supplement companies make the methylated B vitamins, or some generic company in India or China makes the methylated B vitamins. And folks, if you understand that like the huge food companies they buy out all the little food companies, right? Do people actually believe that the giant pharma houses don't own all these little generic companies around the world? Like they own them all. They're just doing it as like, what do they call it? The tax shelters and the shell games. So they can pay less taxes and do whatever. So it's all, you're buying pharma if you're into the methylated B vitamin thing, basically.
53 minutes with you is not long enough, Dr. Garrett Smith. I mean, we're going to have to, it just goes by too quickly. We only have a minute left.
Well, you opened a big, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do want to bring this in because I take this on a regular basis from you guys, which is your 500 milligrams, but I haven't tried your 25 milligram one.
Well, the 25 is just for a lot of people who are, like I said, when I took 50 milligrams in college, I was like, I don't like this. This sucks. And so when people are like, I don't like the flush, my son is like, I won't do it. And I'm like, part of me as a dad, and he lifts with me and stuff. And I go, you're such a wuss, but anyway, I'm like, cause it could literally, he has an anaphylactic allergy to tree nuts. I mean, Carrie's running an EpiPen. Well, I am not giving any medical advice when I say this, but there is actually a paper on mice, anaphylactic mice, and they gave them flush niacin and it basically solved the problem.
Well, we're out of time. We want to thank you for joining us. We'll have to have you on again, and we'll be back on next week.
Yes.
You're listening to the Let's Stay Healthy radio show, sponsored and brought to you by Montana Harvest Natural Food Store in Billings, Montana.